Think about the people who almost never get played. The ones who feel a lie forming before it ever gets spoken out loud. They catch the quiet motive hiding behind a friendly smile and step around the traps everyone else walks straight into. Were they simply born with sharper instincts? Or did they pick up something about the way people really work that most of us never bother to learn? Because the single greatest edge you can carry through life is not raw strength, not confidence, and not even high intelligence. It is the ability to notice what almost everyone else overlooks. Once that skill settles in, you stop seeing people the way you used to. Most of us spend our days listening to the words people choose. The ones who stay sharp watch what those same people actually do. That is where the real difference starts. Someone can swear loyalty while already packing their bags. Someone can heap praise on you while quietly resenting every step you take. Someone can look helpful only because they have already calculated what they will gain. Appearances are cheap to manufacture, and most people swallow them without a second thought. That is why the signals that were always there go unnoticed. Centuries ago, Niccolò Machiavelli saw a plain truth about human nature that still holds. People routinely hide their real aims behind carefully chosen words, carefully managed feelings, and carefully built images. Those who rarely get deceived are not always the smartest in the room. They are simply the most attentive. They track patterns. They catch contradictions. They notice the small details everyone else rushes past. Over time, that quiet awareness becomes a serious advantage. In this video, we are going to walk through 10 lessons drawn from Machiavelli's clear-eyed observations of how people actually behave. You will learn how to spot deception earlier, read actions more accurately, and strengthen your ability to look past the surface. The point is not to turn cynical. The point is to become awake. And once you are awake, the way you move through the world changes. If you are ready to practice the art of staying sharp, let's begin. Number 1. Stop trusting words too quickly. One of the most expensive mistakes people make is believing what is said while ignoring what is done. Most of us learn this the hard way, and usually too late, because words cost almost nothing. Anyone can say the right thing when it serves them. Anyone can make generous promises when there is no real pressure. Anyone can sound loyal, respectful, honest, or caring for a few carefully staged minutes. Behavior is harder to fake for long. That is why sharp people refuse to be hypnotized by smooth talk. They study patterns. They watch for consistency. They notice what someone does when no one is forcing them to perform. A person may tell you they respect you while steadily ignoring every boundary you set. Someone may claim they support you and then vanish the moment things get difficult. Another may praise you loudly in public while competing with you in private. The real danger is that many of us overlook the actions because we have already become emotionally attached to the words. We want the promise to be true. We want the compliments to be sincere. We want the image to be real. Reality, however, does not care how beautiful the sentences sound. There is an old saying that actions speak louder than words. People repeat it constantly, yet very few live by it. The proverb has survived for a reason. Human nature has not changed. For centuries, people have used language to move emotions. Some rely on charm, some on guilt, some on flattery, some on a carefully performed kindness. But actions, eventually, tell the truth. A loyal friend does not only talk about loyalty. They show up, again and again. A trustworthy person does not spend their time explaining why they deserve trust. Their behavior creates it naturally. A dishonest person usually reveals themselves through contradictions. Their words travel one direction, while their actions travel another. That is why sharp people slow down before they give complete trust. They watch how someone treats waiters, strangers, family members, and people who can offer them nothing in return. Character shows itself in the small moments, not in prepared speeches and polished performances. Real character appears in repeated behavior. Machiavelli understood something many still resist. People tend to present the version of themselves that gives them the greatest advantage. If you listen only to words, you will miss reality entirely. This does not require you to become cold or paranoid. It only requires you to keep your eyes open. Listen carefully, yes, but watch even more carefully. Once you start judging people by consistent behavior instead of emotional promises, human nature becomes much clearer. That clarity alone can spare you years of disappointment. Number 2. Look for the motives that stay hidden. One of the earliest things sharp people grasp is this: most people do not put their full intentions on the table right away. That is not always because they are malicious. Sometimes they hide motives because they want approval. Sometimes they want control. Sometimes they want attention, influence, money, comfort, or simple advantage. Self-interest can shape behavior even when the surface looks generous. That is why careful observation matters. Someone may suddenly become extremely warm the moment they need something from you. Another may offer advice that sounds helpful while quietly serving their own interests more than yours. If you never pause to ask why they are doing this, you can stay blind to what is actually happening. Most people stop at appearances. They hear polite language and assume pure motives. They see confidence and assume honesty. They see kindness and assume loyalty. Sharp people go further. They understand that almost every action has a reason behind it. Machiavelli noticed this centuries ago. He saw that people often protect their real desires behind behavior that looks socially acceptable. Someone may pretend to cheer your success while privately hoping you stumble because your progress makes them feel smaller. Someone may pull you into their circle not because they value you, but because they see usefulness in you. Another may play the victim repeatedly because they know guilt is an efficient way to steer emotional people. This does not mean treating every human being as a suspect. That path leads to paranoia, not wisdom. The goal is balance. The goal is learning to observe calmly without getting swept away too quickly. Sharp people ask quiet questions in their own minds. What does this person gain here? Do their actions match the image they present? How do they behave once they no longer need something from you? Do they treat the powerful differently from the powerless? Those questions reveal more than long conversations ever will, because hidden motives tend to leak through behavior. Sometimes it shows as inconsistency, sometimes as a sudden change in attitude, sometimes as envy, subtle manipulation, or support that never quite feels real. Many people ignore these signals because they desperately want to believe the best. Wisdom requires honesty instead. You have to see people as they are, rather than as the version you hope is real. That single shift protects your time, your energy, your reputation, and your peace of mind. The sharp person is rarely the loudest one in the room. More often they are the quiet observer, the one tracking patterns, the one who understands that human nature is layered, complicated, and tightly connected to personal desire. Once you grasp that, you stop reacting blindly to appearances. You begin seeing the forces that actually drive behavior. And that changes everything. Number 3. Get your emotions under control before you judge anyone. One of the fastest ways to misread someone is to judge them while your feelings are running the show. When people are angry, attached, excited, lonely, jealous, or desperate, their vision clouds. Most of the time, they do not even notice it happening. Think how often people ignore clear warning signs simply because they are already emotionally invested. A man overlooks disrespect because he is afraid of losing the relationship. A friend keeps trusting someone who has lied repeatedly because they have known each other for years. Emotions create blind spots, and blind spots distort reality. When feelings grow too strong, people stop observing cleanly. They start defending illusions instead of facing what is true. That is why emotional control is one of the most practical forms of intelligence anyone can develop. Machiavelli understood this clearly. He knew that emotional people are easier to steer because their reactions can be predicted. If someone knows what sparks your anger, they can provoke you. If they know your insecurities, they can shape your decisions. If they understand your need for approval, they can influence your behavior without you noticing. This happens daily in friendships, relationships, workplaces, and social circles. The sharp person learns to pause before reacting, not because they are weak, but because calm observation produces accurate judgment. When the emotional wave settles, patterns become easier to see. You start hearing what people actually mean instead of what you emotionally want them to mean. This is hard for most people because emotions feel urgent. They demand action right now. When someone insults you, pride wants revenge. When someone flatters you, the ego wants to trust them instantly. When someone rejects you, insecurity wants to overreact. But reacting too fast often creates mistakes that patience would have prevented. There is an old piece of wisdom that says emotion is a poor compass. Feelings can be real without being reliable. Just because you feel something intensely does not mean your judgment is correct. A sharp person knows the difference between emotion and reality. They refuse to let temporary feelings make permanent decisions. Instead, they step back mentally. They study tone, behavior, timing, consistency, and intent before they form conclusions. That calmness gives them an edge most people never develop. While others are reacting, they are quietly studying the situation. Over time, this habit reshapes the way you deal with people. You become harder to provoke. You stop trusting too quickly because of charm or attraction. You stop making reckless choices in emotional moments. Most importantly, you begin seeing human behavior with far greater clarity. The person who controls their emotions controls their perception, and the person who controls their perception becomes much harder to deceive. Number 4. Catch the small warning signs early. Most serious problems do not explode overnight. They begin quietly. A little disrespect, a small lie, a strange inconsistency, a subtle push that feels uncomfortable for a second and then gets ignored. That is exactly how many people end up stuck in toxic situations. They overlook the early signals because they seem harmless at the time. Sharp people understand something crucial. Small behaviors often grow into larger patterns. A person who regularly crosses tiny boundaries today may completely disregard you later. Someone who casually lies about minor things may eventually lie about the important ones. A person who enjoys controlling small situations usually becomes more aggressive once they realize no one is stopping them. Manipulation rarely opens with obvious cruelty. It starts with testing. Testing your patience, testing your standards, testing how much disrespect you will absorb before you react. That is why early awareness matters. There is an old proverb that a stitch in time saves 9. It sounds simple, yet the meaning is powerful. Solving a small problem early prevents a much larger disaster later. The same truth applies to human behavior. Many people wait until the damage is unbearable before they finally admit what was obvious from the beginning. They ignore repeated excuses. They dismiss uncomfortable feelings. They explain away toxic patterns because they want temporary peace. But avoiding the truth for a while usually creates greater pain later. Machiavelli understood that human nature reveals itself through repeated actions, especially when people believe no one is watching carefully. That is why observant individuals do not focus only on dramatic betrayals. They study the small moments. How does someone react when they do not get their way? How do they speak during disagreement? Do they apologize sincerely or only when consequences appear? Do they respect boundaries consistently or only when it benefits them? These details matter more than most people realize because character leaks through habits. Many ignore warning signs because they fear confrontation. They hope things will magically improve on their own. Sharp people know reality rarely works that way. When someone repeatedly shows unhealthy behavior, the smartest response is not blind optimism. It is honest observation. This does not require becoming overly suspicious or emotionally cold. It simply means respecting your instincts when something consistently feels off. Sometimes your mind notices problems before your emotions are ready to accept them. Learning to trust careful observation can protect your peace, your confidence, and your future. The people who avoid major disasters are not always the strongest. Often they are simply the ones who paid attention earlier than everyone else. Once manipulation takes deeper root, escaping becomes much harder. That is why sharp people never dismiss small warning signs. They understand that little cracks often reveal the entire foundation underneath. Number 5. Listen more than you speak. One of the most underrated skills in life is knowing when to stay quiet. Most people enter conversations trying to impress. They rush to speak. They rush to explain themselves. They rush to prove how smart, successful, funny, or important they are. Because of that, they miss valuable information sitting right in front of them. Sharp people move differently. They understand that silence is not weakness. In many situations, silence becomes an advantage. When you talk too much, people learn about you. When you listen carefully, you learn about them. And the truth is, people reveal far more than they realize when they feel free to speak without interruption. Someone may expose insecurity through constant bragging. Another may quietly reveal bitterness through sarcasm and passive remarks. Some people reveal dishonesty by changing details every time they tell the same story. Others expose their real priorities through the things they complain about most often. You notice these details only when you stop trying to dominate every conversation. Machiavelli understood the power of observation. He knew that people often uncover themselves naturally if given enough time and space. That is why emotionally disciplined people rarely feel the need to announce every thought. They observe first. They pay attention to tone, timing, energy, and contradictions. This skill changes the way you experience social situations. You start realizing that many people are not actually listening. They are simply waiting for their turn to speak. Meaningful understanding has become rare. A person who truly listens immediately stands out. Listening does more than help you understand others. It helps you control yourself. When you speak less impulsively, you avoid unnecessary conflict, oversharing, and emotional mistakes. Many people damage opportunities simply because they reveal too much too quickly. They expose every plan, every frustration, every insecurity. Sharp people understand the value of restraint. Not everything needs immediate expression. Sometimes the smartest move is to remain calm and let the other person keep talking. Silence creates space. Inside that space, people often reveal their intentions, emotions, and weaknesses without realizing it. You also begin noticing something else. Confident people usually do not feel desperate to dominate conversations. Insecure people often speak endlessly because they crave validation and control. A calm observer does not need constant attention. They draw strength from awareness. Over time, this habit gives you a powerful social edge. You become harder to read while becoming better at reading others. You notice hidden tension faster. You detect dishonesty earlier. You understand people more deeply because you are paying attention instead of performing. In a world where almost everyone wants to be heard, the person who truly listens becomes far more powerful than most realize. Number 6. Watch how people behave under pressure. Anyone can appear calm, kind, and reasonable when life is comfortable. The real test begins when pressure arrives. Stress changes people. It exposes impatience. It exposes selfishness. It exposes emotional weakness that normally stays hidden behind polite manners. That is why sharp people never judge someone only during easy moments. They pay attention to how people react during difficulty, conflict, failure, delays, disappointment, and uncertainty. Pressure removes masks. A person may seem respectful until they become frustrated. Someone may appear loyal until protecting you becomes inconvenient. Another may act confident until life stops going according to plan. Suddenly, a completely different side appears. This is one of the oldest truths about human behavior. Hard situations reveal what comfort hides. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that many people perform well when conditions are favorable. But when fear, stress, or desperation arrive, true character becomes visible. Observing reactions under pressure tells you more than years of casual conversation. Watch how someone behaves after they lose control of a situation. Do they become aggressive? Do they blame everyone else? Do they panic and abandon their principles immediately? Or do they remain disciplined even during chaos? Those moments reveal emotional maturity far more accurately than polished words ever could. Most people are not prepared for pressure. That is why stressful moments often uncover personality traits people work hard to conceal. Insecurity frequently appears as anger. Weakness often disguises itself as arrogance. Fear sometimes reveals itself through manipulation or dishonesty. When pressure rises, maintaining a fake image becomes exhausting. Eventually, reality slips out. You can also learn a great deal by watching how people treat others during difficult moments. Some become cruel when stressed because pressure magnifies what already exists inside them. Others become calmer, more responsible, and more protective of the people around them. That difference matters. Anyone can look impressive when everything feels easy. Character becomes measurable when life turns uncomfortable. There is another important lesson here. Pressure does not only expose other people, it exposes you too. Your reactions during hardship reveal whether you are emotionally controlled or emotionally reactive. Sharp people use stressful situations as opportunities for observation and self-awareness. Instead of instantly exploding, they step back mentally and study what the moment is revealing. Over time, this creates wisdom. You stop being distracted by appearances. You stop judging people only by charm, confidence, or social image. You begin understanding that real personality shows itself during moments of tension. Pressure forces honesty out of people. Once you start watching people during difficult moments instead of comfortable ones, you see human nature with far greater accuracy. That awareness alone can protect you from trusting the wrong people too deeply. Number 7. Pay close attention to envy. Envy is one of the most carefully hidden emotions in human nature. Very few people openly admit they feel jealous of someone else. Instead, envy usually hides behind fake support, subtle criticism, passive comments, or strange shifts in behavior. If you are not observant, you may miss it completely. That is dangerous, because envy quietly damages relationships from the inside. A person may smile in front of you while secretly resenting your progress. Someone may congratulate you on your success, yet feel uncomfortable every time you improve. Another may slowly grow distant after you achieve something they wanted for themselves. This happens more often than most people realize. Machiavelli understood that people are deeply affected by comparison. Human beings naturally measure themselves against others. When someone feels left behind, insecure, or inferior, envy can quietly take root. The strange part is that envy does not always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from friends, co-workers, relatives, even people who once supported you sincerely. Success changes social dynamics. The moment you begin improving yourself, some people feel inspired while others feel threatened. Sharp people learn how to recognize the difference early. One sign of envy is subtle disrespect, disguised as humor. A jealous person may constantly make small jokes that diminish your achievements. Another sign is the inability to celebrate your wins genuinely. They may quickly change the subject, ignore your progress, or suddenly grow cold whenever attention moves toward you. Sometimes, envy appears as unnecessary competition. You share good news, and they instantly try to outdo you instead of simply being happy for you. Other times it shows through quiet sabotage. A person may discourage your goals, question your decisions, or plant doubt in your mind because your growth reminds them of their own insecurities. Many people fail to recognize these signs because they assume everyone around them wants the best for them. Human emotions are more complicated than that. Not everyone can handle seeing someone else rise. This does not mean becoming arrogant or suspicious of every relationship. The goal is awareness. The goal is understanding that hidden resentment often exists where people least expect it. Sharp people stay humble, but they also stay observant. They notice who becomes uncomfortable when they improve. They notice who only appears during failure, but disappears during success. They notice who secretly competes instead of supporting. Envy leaves traces, small reactions, small expressions, small changes in energy. Those details matter. Once you understand this part of human nature, you stop being shocked by strange behavior from certain people. You realize that sometimes the problem was never your personality. Your growth itself became the trigger. And the more successful, disciplined, or confident you become, the more important this lesson becomes. Some people simply struggle to celebrate the success of others. Number 8. Stop needing everyone's approval. One of the easiest ways to lose clear judgment is constantly needing other people to like you. The moment approval becomes the priority, honesty usually weakens. People who desperately want acceptance begin changing themselves to avoid rejection. They stay quiet when they should speak. They tolerate disrespect they should reject. They agree with things they do not truly believe. Over time, they slowly lose their ability to think independently. Machiavelli understood something uncomfortable about human nature. The need for approval creates vulnerability. When someone knows you are afraid of being disliked, they gain power over your decisions. They can pressure you emotionally, control your behavior socially, or manipulate your choices simply by threatening rejection. This happens everywhere. People shape their personality around applause. Sharp people eventually understand that trying to satisfy everyone is impossible. No matter how kind, talented, honest, or helpful you become, someone will still misunderstand you, dislike you, criticize you, or compete with you. That is reality. The sooner you accept it, the freer your mind becomes. Once you stop needing universal approval, your perception sharpens. You stop filtering every decision through fear. You stop ignoring obvious truths just to keep people comfortable. This is where many people fail. They already see the manipulation. They already notice the disrespect. They already understand the unhealthy situation. Yet they stay trapped because they fear losing acceptance. So they continue pretending everything is fine. They continue sacrificing peace for validation. There is a major difference between being respected and being liked. Respect usually comes from standards, honesty, discipline, and self-control. Being liked often comes from comfort, agreement, and emotional convenience. Sometimes those two things clash completely. A person who always tells the truth will not always be popular. A person with strong boundaries will disappoint certain people. A person who refuses manipulation will upset those who benefited from controlling them. That is normal. Sharp people understand this and remain grounded anyway. They do not become cruel or arrogant. They simply stop making approval the center of their identity. Once your self-worth depends entirely on outside validation, your judgment becomes easy to influence. You begin living according to reactions instead of principles. That creates confusion, insecurity, and emotional exhaustion. The strongest kind of confidence is quiet independence. the ability to stand alone mentally when necessary, the ability to say no without guilt, the ability to remain honest even when honesty is unpopular. Over time, this mindset changes the way people interact with you. Manipulative individuals lose leverage. Fake relationships become easier to recognize. Your decisions become more aligned with reality instead of social pressure. The moment you stop needing everybody's approval, you finally begin seeing people and yourself much more clearly. Number 9. Judge priorities by what people actually do. People reveal what matters to them through choices, not speeches. This is one of the clearest ways to understand someone's true character, because anyone can talk about values. Anyone can describe big dreams, strong morals, loyalty, discipline, or love. But priorities become visible through repeated decisions. That is where reality speaks. A person may claim family is everything yet never make time for the people they supposedly care about. Someone may talk endlessly about honesty while constantly hiding important truths when honesty becomes uncomfortable. Another may say they support your growth but become absent whenever your success requires real encouragement or sacrifice from them. Actions expose importance, not intentions, not excuses, not emotional declarations. Machiavelli understood that human beings naturally protect what they value most. When you observe where people consistently place their energy, attention, time, and effort, you begin understanding their real priorities quickly. That is why sharp people pay close attention to patterns instead of promises. Repeated behavior tells the truth eventually. If someone constantly claims they are too busy for you, but easily creates time for other things they enjoy, the message is already clear. If someone repeatedly chooses comfort over responsibility, that reveals something important about their discipline. If a person abandons principles the moment pressure appears, that exposes what they truly worship: convenience. Many people struggle to accept this reality because they become attached to words. They listen to explanations instead of observing decisions. But explanations can be endless. Behavior is harder to argue with. Sharp people also notice that small choices matter more than dramatic moments. Anyone can perform loyalty during public situations. Anyone can appear caring when others are watching. Consistent priorities appear during ordinary days. Who checks on people without needing attention for it? Who keeps promises even when nobody is forcing them? Who remains dependable during difficult seasons instead of disappearing when life becomes inconvenient? Those details reveal character far more accurately than emotional conversations. This lesson applies to yourself as well. Your own daily choices reveal your priorities honestly. Not your goals, not your intentions, your actions. If someone says health matters but destroys their body daily, their priorities are exposed. If someone claims growth matters but avoids discomfort constantly, reality becomes visible. That is why self-awareness is so important. Sharp people do not only study others, they also study themselves honestly. Wisdom begins when you stop lying to yourself about your own behavior. Over time, this mindset changes the way you evaluate relationships completely. You stop becoming hypnotized by charming language. You stop confusing emotional intensity with genuine commitment. You begin focusing on consistency, sacrifice, discipline, reliability, and follow-through. At the end of the day, people make time for what matters to them. They protect what they value. They invest in what they truly care about. Once you learn to judge priorities through actions instead of words, human behavior becomes much easier to understand. Number 10. Train yourself to observe everything. Most people move through life half awake. They look, but they do not really see. They hear, but they do not fully register. They experience moments but forget the details almost instantly. Because of that, they miss a huge amount of information happening around them every single day. Sharp individuals train themselves differently. They slow down mentally, even when life is moving fast. They pay attention to surroundings, tone shifts, body language, timing, and repetition. Not because they are paranoid, but because awareness creates clarity. When you start observing carefully, you notice how much truth is hidden in small things. The way someone pauses before answering a question, the way their voice changes when a certain subject comes up, the way patterns repeat in their habits, conversations, and reactions. These details are always there, but most people never focus long enough to notice them. That is the difference between reacting and understanding. A reactive person only responds to what is obvious in the moment. An observant person connects dots over time. Machiavelli understood that human behavior often reveals itself indirectly through subtle signals rather than direct statements. That is why careful attention becomes a powerful skill in understanding situations correctly. But observation is not only about other people. It is also about your environment. The spaces you enter. The energy of different places. The changes in mood when certain individuals arrive. The shift in atmosphere during different conversations. Everything communicates something, even when no one is speaking clearly. The more you practice noticing these small signals, the sharper your awareness becomes. At first it feels uncomfortable because you realize how much you used to overlook. Over time it becomes natural. You begin to see layers in situations that others completely miss. Another important part of this skill is patience. Observation cannot be rushed. If you jump to conclusions too quickly, you lose accuracy. Real understanding comes from watching patterns unfold over time instead of reacting to single moments. Here is something most people never realize. Awareness is a habit, not a talent. It can be developed. It grows when you stop rushing through experiences and start engaging with them more carefully. Even simple practices train this ability, noticing how people behave differently in different settings, paying attention to what remains consistent over time, remembering small details that others forget quickly. These practices slowly build a stronger sense of clarity. Once your awareness improves, your decisions improve with it. You stop getting confused by surface-level impressions. You stop being easily influenced by first appearances. You begin understanding situations with more depth and less guesswork. Life does not become simpler, but your perception becomes sharper. That alone gives you an advantage most people never develop. The person who observes more understands more. And the person who understands more moves through life with greater control and confidence. Now take a moment and connect everything you have just heard. This was never about fear. It was never about doubting every person you meet. And it was never about shutting yourself away from others. It was about awareness, about seeing life without filters, about understanding that people are not always what they present in the first few seconds, or even the first few months. You learned how words can be shaped, how intentions can be hidden, how emotions can blur judgment, and how patterns slowly reveal reality over time. You also saw something deeper. Most mistakes in life do not come from lack of intelligence. They come from lack of attention, from rushing, from assuming, from filling gaps with hope instead of facts. When you slow down mentally, everything changes. You begin to notice consistency. You begin to recognize behavior cycles. You begin to understand who is stable and who is temporary in your life. More importantly, you start understanding yourself better too. Awareness does not only expose others, it also reflects your own habits, choices, and reactions. Remember this clearly. The goal is not to become distant or cold. The goal is to become precise in your thinking, to stop being easily pulled by appearance, to stop reacting without understanding, to stop giving unlimited trust to untested behavior. Machiavelli's view of human nature was never about hate. It was about clarity, seeing things as they are, not as we wish them to be. When you apply that mindset, You move differently in life. You speak less but observe more. You react less but understand more. You trust slower but more wisely. If this message made you reflect even a little, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more psychology and human behavior lessons like this. Because the more you understand people, the less control confusion has over your life. And now, I want to hear from you. Which lesson hit you the hardest? Write it in the comments. Stay aware. Stay sharp. And never stop observing reality for what it truly is.